Howdy folks, Cranky Motorsports here on another beautiful day. It is Friday. I'm out here doing more work on the Bel Air project, and last time I think I talked about the steering. I got it about 80-85% of the way done. That's still about where I am. I need to weld some pipes into the frame, make some support for the bottom, and weld that onto the frame. I'm pretty close to doing that, and the trunk is pretty much all done now. And before you judge me on my fire rated foam, at least I used fire rated foam. I need to do a little touch up on some Bondo down here on the bottom. It doesn't really matter if it looks good because I'm going to put a big like 4-inch pipe bumper on this thing, kind of like a push bumper in the old days. I can see that my trunk or something leaks water back here because it poured for a little bit today, and I got the floor in the trunk all wet, which kind of stinks because I want to put my tank in today, and I bought some more truck bed liner. This is all painted with truck bed liner. I want to put another coat of truck bed liner on it so I can get it really well coated, at least under where the tank is. Then I'll drop the tank in this thing. That'll kind of finish up everything I need to do in the trunk. And yeah, it'll be ready for the next step, which is starting the floor and the interior, finishing up the steering, and then, you know, doing everything else. But for now, I'm very happy with how the trunk came out. Looks pretty good, nice and solid. And one other thing having to do with my steering, I had debated, you know, leaving these big tires on the front. These are 225/70 15s. They're not real huge, but they're actually taller than the backs. The backs are about a 26.6, and I think these are about a 28-inch tall tire, and they're about 8 inches wide, 7.5, 8 inches wide. But because it has manual steering and kind of in keeping with the Gasser look, I wanted something that was a little bit more correct for that, even though I hate to take those Kragers off. The studs that are on those hubs right now are the original studs from 1951 from that front end, and they're really short. I have maybe 5 rotations of the nut on them, and that doesn't really sit well with me. So what I opted to do was get some 15x4-inch rallies for the front of the car and some much smaller tires. So these are a 195/65 15, and those are a 15x4 wheel. They're Vision wheels. Kind of stinks they're made in China, but I'm pretty sure the Jegs wheels that I have on the back of this are probably made in China as well. You know, they have a warranty and stuff on them, whatever, so they'll look pretty cool. I mean, it's gonna kind of take away from the nostalgia look where you had like your Steelies in the back and the aluminum ones in the front, or the mags in the front, but I think it'll look halfway decent. Plus I'm going to a much shorter tire. Those are about a 24.8 or a 25-inch tall tire versus like a 28 that's on there now, so it'll shrink the size down. They're going to be about 1.5 inches narrower, plus they're going to be on that 4-inch wheel, so they're going to sit in a little bit more, and overall it'll give more tire, more gap around the tire and the fender well. So that's what I'm working on right now. Do a little bit more on the trunk, and then I got to get started on, like I said, finishing up the steering. I might weld those pieces into the frame. Perfect example of doing the right thing the wrong way. Great stuff. Fire foam. Yes, it's kind of a hack thing to do, to fill in all of the holes in the body with this stuff, but there were so many raw holes in this. Unless I cut the entire back of this car off or literally pieced together the entire underside, there was no way I was going to fill this stuff all in. And if I make some pieces of metal to go across here and fill all this spot in, you'll never even know it's there. Besides the fact that might stop my trunk from rattling. Well, there's one on the car. There's a little bit more work than I anticipated because One thing you'll notice if you ever change tires, the smaller the rim and the smaller the tire, the harder they are to get on. But oops, my new welding helmet, high tech of course. There's one, and it definitely gives it that look that I was looking for with the skinny wheel in the front. I'm digging it. So I just got to do the other one, and maybe once I get my steering all figured out. I just noticed this kingpin's really loose. Never rebuilt a kingpin, but this is the first time for everything, so I have to get new kingpin bushings and change those out at some point. But once the steering's finished, put the fenders back on and actually see what this bad boy's going to look like. But for now, there's my really high-end Westlake, what are they? Westlake RP18 and a 195 65/15. Nice and short little tires. They're about 24.8 inches tall, so about 2 inches shorter than the back tires. Much skinnier. They're probably like a 6.5 inch tread on this 4 inch wide rim. So I want to show you guys what I was talking about where I don't think there's enough threads on the wheel. So if I bring my camera down here real close, you can see, like, because the rim's aluminum, it's probably like, I don't know, a ½ inch thick. And if you look closely, well, it's really hard to tell because the perception is off on the camera, but there's probably only about a ½ inch of stud sticking out beyond the wheel, which means with the tapered seat, I probably only have about 5 threads on those nuts holding the wheels on. And for me, knowing that I plan to drive this thing on the highway and stuff, 5 threads holding those wheels on is not really enough. So when I put the steel wheel on, because the steel is nowhere near as thick as the rim is on these aluminum wheels, and actually that's probably more like 5/8 of an inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch. Yeah, at least a ½ inch, maybe 5/8, I'm not sure, thickness on this wheel. And the steel rims is only about 3/8 of an inch. So that means I get about 1.5 to 2 turns more on each nut with the steel wheels on the car. So I put these guys on. I get about the way that the usual drag racing rolls go. You're supposed to run open-ended lug nuts on these, and you're supposed to have the stud going all the way through a standard open-ended lug nut. So if I put an open-ended lug nut on this, it would probably go flush. Whether or not that's good enough, I'm not sure for drag racing, but see if I count this. So, oops, when the threads start engaging, right about there, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5 full turns before it even seats on the wheel, and that's definitely a lot more than I had with the other ones. So those might have only had about 3 full turns before it seated on the cone and the wheel. That's just not good enough. So steel wheels, even though they don't look as cool as the aluminum ones do, I don't think I'm going to sell those because those are discontinued. I'd actually like to find 2 more so I could run all 4 of those on the car if I really wanted to. But for the nostalgic look, having mags in the front and steelies in the back is fine, so that's why I only bought 2 of those originally. So I at least want to keep them. And actually, now that I got the rim seated, I got another whole full turn. So there's about 6 turns on these lug nuts, which more than enough to keep that tightly engaged. have one of these derby caps, but I don't really like these on the skinny wheels. So if I either got the one that says disc brake on it, which obviously they're not disc brakes, it's four-wheel drum, but if I got the one that said disc brake, or I got the one that's just the smooth, the round one like the police cars have on it, I think that's what I want to put on this, just the smooth ones. And again, if I ever did take this drag racing, hubcaps aren't allowed because they want to see the lug nuts, and again, even these lug nuts aren't really allowed. If I cut the end of the lug nut off so they could see inside, it might be okay, but I don't want to do that. But I like the wheels. Let's go get a wide angle shot from the other side and see how it looks. Once I put the fender on, I'll be able to really see it a little bit better, but I don't know, what do you guys think? Four-wheel rallies. Oh, the skinnies, I don't care, even if they're not perfect, they're actually a slightly different shade because the back ones are Jegs brand and the front ones are Vision, but just the fact that the wheels match and it has skinnies in the front, the skinnies are what really does it for me. They just look fantastic. You can see the leaf spring up front a little bit more. You can see the drum from the back of the wheel. So if I look back here, you can actually see the drum behind the wheel, so that looks cool. And if I can pan out far enough, which may not, oh yeah, there we go. Just having that skinny little wheel up front, that completes the look of the car. I don't care if they're radials over drag tires. I want to run radials on this just because I probably won't ever drag race it, and if I do, it's probably going to go like 15.5 seconds at 75 miles an hour or something, which would be perfectly fine because it's not meant to be a fast car. It's meant to just look nostalgic. It's never going to be a fast race car, but I'm pretty happy about that right there. I love the wheels. Happy with the tires. 195/65 was definitely a good size for this thing. Definitely still kind of in keeping with that. The whole theme of this car again was to be like something that a kid inherited in the late 50s, early 60s and turned into a drag car in the 60s and then parked in a barn. So these wheels definitely era correct for the 60s. I think they started putting them on Corvettes in, I don't know, 68 or 9. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but somewhere around there. Late 60s they started putting these on. Same thing, these would have come on Camaros, not the skinny ones in the front. They would have been 7s or 8s, probably 7s. But I like them. And actually with the skinny tire, the small tire on here, it actually makes the front wheel look like it's a 16-inch. It looks bigger than it actually is. And the tire's seated nice and tight on these rims. It actually took quite a bit for me to get this one seated. I didn't think it was going to go on very easily, so I deflated it a couple of times and I lubed it up with some more bead sealer and some WD-40, and then it finally went on. But these tires are nice and tight on these wheels, which is another good thing. They're not going to slip. I like it a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get some other stuff done, try to get my fuel tank put in the trunk, and I'll come back in a little bit.